just the other day, people were coming up to me and saying, "Look, man, what is juxtaposition?" And I mean, if I had to count on my fingers how many times people ask me that in a day, I would run out of fingers because it's such a common question. All sarcasm aside, however, what is juxtaposition? Now is an appropriate time to ask that question. It's a Scrabble word, obviously. It's a very high scorer, but it's a $50 word for a $10 concept. It's basically the idea of putting one thing next to another, and then the fact that those things are juxtaposed is the word, or put next to each other, and then thought of in the context that it yields some other kind of idea. A third concept comes out of putting these two things next to each other. So, think about the word position. It's about actually placing things next to each other, and think about juxta as in something that nobody knows what means. Maybe that's really super helpful. But yeah, so this is the fundamental magic of editing. This is how editing works. You've got a frame of video, and another frame of video, and another frame of video, and they get increasingly larger for no apparent reason. But you put a person here, and you put a mountain there, and you put, I don't know, like a Batman here. And you've got these individual elements. This is what you're working with, is these individual shots and frames. And the real interesting stuff happens actually right here at the intersection between those frames, because by themselves these shots may mean one thing, and just like we talked about with cinematic grammar, a shot is basically a word, and you can obviously rearrange words to have different meanings in a sentence. And it's the same thing with editing by using these individual shots and rearranging them in time. So this space here that I've highlighted in red, this is the interesting space, because it's not actually a part of the movie. It's not something that you've shot. It actually exists in the mind of the viewer, and this is where the magic happens, is that they actually fill in the blanks. When you show them a shot of a person and a mountain, they're not thinking person and mountain. They're thinking, oh, that person's looking at a mountain, or that person feels like a mountain, or that person is going to jump off a mountain, or something like that. They start filling in the blanks, and that's why cinema is really awesome, is that it's participatory. Even though you're being shown this rapid succession of images and you're sitting in a dark room with a bunch of other strangers, a lot of the story is actually going on in your own mind. So this is the fundamental job of an editor, is to encourage the audience to have these magic moments happen in between the frames. Now, of course, there's no space for this. There's no empty spot that comes up on the screen and says, please think for a minute. It would be cool if we had little subliminal messages that could pop up in between frames, but it would really, I don't know, I think it would interrupt the flow of the film, perhaps. But these actually happen, in the background of the mind of the audience. So that's what you're trying to do, and that's the idea of juxtaposition, is putting images next to each other in time, one right after the next, and creating more than the sum of those two images. In graphic design, they call this Gestalt, which is a fantastic, fabulous word. Fantastic, fabulous word? Is that really necessary? Fantastic German word is what I was going for, which means more than the sum of its parts. So you graphic design people may have come across this one, Gestalt. It's actually a better word the more of an accent that you use when you pronounce it. And this is, again, more than the sum of its parts. So the way I remember this is usually like Voltron. I don't know if Voltron is before your time, but he was a big giant robot that was made out of smaller robots that looked like lions and stuff. So you had 5 little robots, but then they would combine to create a giant robot who was way more powerful than any of the 5 robots by themselves. If Voltron is not in your current pop culture vernacular, it is on Netflix and probably on YouTube as well, so check it out. It's totally terrible, and they have the worst theme music ever, but it's something, you know, that obviously feeds into the basics of cinema and the ability to explain these things. So that's the idea. Going further, there was a lot of research and study done into this by some filmmakers back in the early days of cinema, and the pioneers of this were actually Russian. So there was some interesting communist research done on this, and so the pioneering work of proving the existence of that effect of juxtaposition, where it came from people like Sergei Eisenstein, who's thought of as the father of modern editing theory, and another guy named Kuleshov, who did an experiment where he juxtaposed the picture of a person looking and then showed what he was looking at, and then came back and showed the person looking again. And then if you changed the thing that he was looking at, you know, actually, I'm doing a really terrible job of explaining this. How about we go to somebody who has a little bit more knowledge of it, Mr. Alfred Hitchcock. Take it away.
Now, the third way is what one might call pure cinematics, the assembly of film, and how it can be changed to create a different idea. Now we have a close-up. Let me show what he sees. Let's assume he saw a woman holding a baby in her arms. Now we cut back to his reaction to what he sees, and he smiles. Now what is he as a character? He's a kindly man. He's sympathetic. Now, let's take the middle piece of film away, the woman with the child, but leave his 2 pieces of film as they were. Now we'll put in a piece of film of a girl in a bikini. He looks, girl in a bikini, he smiles. What is he now? The dirty old man. He's no longer the benign gentleman who loves babies. That's the difference. That's what film can do for you.
Thank you, Alfred. So yeah, as you can see there, juxtaposition is the magic that goes into editing and actually creates different ideas based on the order in which you show shots, or the juxtaposition, the placement of different elements. And if you replace one element with another, it completely changes your reaction to the story. So how do you do this? We'll go into that next, talking about the editor's other jobs. And after that, we'll talk about the actual application of what this means. But in general, remember that you were trying to juxtapose images by putting one right after the other. And you do this for roughly 30 frames per second, depending on what medium you're working in exactly, and that is what an editor does at a very basic level. Now, let's talk about the bigger picture of what editors have to do in the next video.